that you've heard people say many, many times. You don't pass through this world, but once you get yours, and I'll get mine. But I've got a philosophy I believe I'd rather go by. And if you'll just listen, you may want to give it a try. Leave a lot of happy tracks as you go down life's road. Leave a lot of happy tracks everywhere you go. Leave a lot of happy tracks. Leave a lot of happy tracks.
How about that? The Florida Boys and Happy Tracks. Gene Shears called this morning, one of our WLAF alums, and said, hey, make sure you play Hack's favorite song, Happy Tracks by the Florida Boys. And on a fun note about that, of course, Hack had a program about this time every day on the radio. Hack would say, no, make sure they're about a minute long, minute and a half, these songs. And Gene said he always made exception for Happy Tracks because it's about a 3-minute song. So there we go. We're honoring and celebrating Hack Ayers today. Mr. Jack Reynolds, People's National Bank of the South, is with us. Mr. Reynolds, you and Hack go way back.
We go back at least 65 years. We've been friends for many years. We both have Stinking Creek roots. He's got a lot of relatives up there, and so do I. They're all good people. Now, Hack, one thing that I always admired about Hack, he did not waste any time. He was working full speed ahead. He would come by, and it was just bang, bang, and right on. He looked about his business. He married into a nice family, the Housley family. And Hack worked hard. The community has lost a real man, a good friend of mine. And what can I say about Hack except good things, as we've been friends and known each other for many years and been close. And he, in later years, at my home place, we get together about 10:30 every Saturday morning and have coffee and visit. And Hack came by and visited with us. And, of course, now I've lost Hack, and I've lost Ed Bailiff and Conrad Troutman and others, Ben Rogers. But Hack was a good man, and I really admired him all through the years.
He served us. He was the county clerk, I think, at one time.
He was. He was in politics for 2 or 3 terms, and he thought he needed to get out of that and work on his business, and he did.
He worked here pretty well, didn't he?
He did, apparently. At least that's what I think.
Well, a funny story. You remember J.B. Wright, who was the hospital administrator. We're visiting with Jack Reynolds here, honoring Hack Ayers today. J.B. moved to town, and he was talking with somebody about if they would finish their education, he'd hire them at the hospital. And he had not met a lot of people at this time of being in La Follette, and Hack Ayers was in that party, and he looked at Hack. He said, if you'll get your education, I'll give you a job too.
Hack didn't want a job. He wanted to work full speed ahead. He's raised a good family and taught them all how to work. And, of course, Hack's mother taught him and the rest of the family how to work. I mean, that was they had great work ethics. And Hack just kept going. His daughters, they've married nice men, and they're hard workers, and the grandchildren, and probably the great-grandchildren coming on, they'll be there too, most likely.
Must just be in the genes.
Well, I guess, because they've got good work ethics.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Reynolds, we appreciate you taking time. Anything else you'd like to share with us about Hack Ayers?
Well, I've lost a close friend, and I'm sorry that he's gone, but he's in a better place. He was having problems there on the end, and I'll miss him. And the community has lost a good man, and so has the state and the whole outfit around it. No Hack.
That's very well said.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Jack Reynolds with People's National Bank of the South with us here. We have Charlie Davis on the phone. Josh, this will have to be an interview with you and Charlie, if you will pick up and visit with Charlie there. And Mr. Jack Reynolds visiting with us today. Dormus Miller's here, and Big Josh is on the phone now with Charlie Davis.
Hey, Charlie, Big Josh here. How are you, sir?
Hi, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Well. I guess you've been listening to Mr. Reynolds and Jim.
I haven't had a chance to listen to him yet. I was just calling in on my cell phone.
Okay, and we're just today is the day we're celebrating Hack Ayers, and
Yes.
you're going to share some things with us.
Yes. Can I go ahead now?
Yes, sir. You go right
Yeah.
ahead.
Josh, I was just thinking since last night, my recollection of knowing Hack came as a small boy, I guess, going to the bargain barns on Friday night and listening to him to sell things. Bigger than life figure to me. He later on in life shared with me that he would go to Cincinnati and buy these pieces of used furniture, and when he crossed over the county line into Jellicoe, they became antiques. And that's how he sold them. Hack was a very prideful person, very proud of his heritage, that he was from the Stinking Creek community. He reminded me daily how unfortunate I was that I grew up in Davis Chapel and didn't have the benefit of being from Stinking Creek. And that was a running joke between Hack and myself. A lot of people, a couple of stories I'll share with you real quick. A lot of people may not know that Hack owned the Hampton Inn, and he loved to go there. He'd go in and eat breakfast. Earlier on, when he was in better health, he would go in and bus tables and get people drinks and just whatever that they needed. And a couple shared with me on a visit the other day that they were in there one time and was leaving and overheard another couple say, "You think we need to leave that elderly guy a good tip?" They had no idea that Hack was the owner, and that's the way he wanted it. People would say to him, "Do you own this motel?" And he'd say, "I've been told that." He was not a boastful person, and he didn't do. Now he really, I guess, for the last year or so, I've had the fortune to be a part of his life every day. And he was a prideful person, and like I say, he still to the end wanted to do things for himself. And I guess I get on his nerves sometimes. Just one quick story though. I said to him one morning, I said, "Hack, would you like to have something to drink?" And he said, "No." I said, "What about something to eat?" "No." I said, "Would you like for me to sit down and shut up?" And he said, "Yes, please." And so I did, and I kept trying to get back at him, and so he would give me a hard time. It was not unusual. Most people know he'd send me home once or twice a week, and the next morning I'd just show up again. But I was trying to up him one day, and I said to him, "Hack, you're a good Christian man, and when you pass, you're going to heaven." He said, "That's right." I said, "Well, if you pass before I do," I said, "I'm coming a little bit later." And I said, "You know what that means? That's eternity. And I'll be there every day. And you might want to like me just a little bit here." And he looked at me as only Hack could with that little grin, as if to say, "Touche, he got me." One other thing I would say, anyone who knew Hack or knows Hack had a common saying. And I would just sum up his life by saying, "Good show, Hack." Thank you, Josh.
Hey, Charlie, listen,
Yes.
I appreciate that, and there's a beautiful lady here. There's a lady here right now that wants to talk to you. If you'll hold on just a second.
I will.
Charlie, this is Cody.
Hey, Cody.
Debbie, Tracy, and I just want you to know that whether you want to be or not, you're now an Ayers.
Thank you, honey.
The brother we always wanted and needed. But we love you
Well,
dearly,
I'm
and we don't know
thankful.
what we would have done without you.
Love
have
you all,
been
too.
the biggest blessing to our family this past year.
Same to me, Cody. Thank you so much, honey.
We love you, Charlie.
Love you.
Charlie Davis, of course, spent what was it, the last couple of years with Hack, about a year. And we're celebrating Hack Ayers today with memories, stories. Dormus is next in line, I guess, right? We let Dormus. Are you girls on a schedule? Are you good? Okay. The girls are here. We call you Deborah, Debbie, Deb. Hey you is here. Tracy is here, and you heard from Cody there. Dormus Miller is here. Dormus, what a fella, Hack Ayers.
Hack Ayers was my hero. And I think Hack Ayers was a lot of folks in this county was hero. I've told so many people, Hack Ayers done more for this county, economy, jobs, than any 10 men that you could put together. The jobs he created is, you can't go on and on and on about. I mean, I worked for him off and on, went to church with him for a little over 30 years, and we were on the council together. The man was full of wisdom. He was full of Spirit of God. I think Hack is, like his daughter said, he's walking on the streets of gold. Now, he's not in that wheelchair. He's walking on the streets of gold. But, so many memories about Hack. And all the subdivisions. When I was in the courthouse one day, I sat down and done a little research on how many subdivisions in Campbell County alone Hack Ayers developed, and he had some partners in some of them, but 106
is that all?
Subdivisions in Campbell County alone. Now, can you imagine how many homes, people right now live in homes that were in those subdivisions? And I could go on and on, but one of his good friends, Bill Parrott, Bill, we called him Sawmill Bill, and he was in partners with Hack a lot on developing some of the subdivisions, and so we were both good friends of Bill. And when Bill passed away, we were contacted about being his pallbearers at his funeral. So they buried Bill out in the ridges, and the hearse went far as it could go, and then we had to unload him and walk through the briars on up to the cemetery. It wasn't very used. So I think Hack was in front of me on the left, and I was in the middle, or maybe on the rear. And the pallbearer next to me stepped in the yellow jacket's nest. So those yellow jackets started going up his fat leg. Well, he forgot about being a pallbearer, and he took off running and smacking those. So me and Hack had to hunker down and, share his load. But he traveled him and Tommy out west with us a few times, and we had so many good trips. We would go to Cheyenne Rodeo, or we'd go four-wheeling. And speaking of four-wheeling, we were, me and Hack and some more guys were four-wheeling on those little four-wheel drive. They wasn't side-by-side, and they were subject to flip backwards. So Hack and Josh, his grandson Josh, he was riding with him. Josh was a big old boy, So we'd went up, going up on the mountain up to McLean Rock, coming from the backside. Real rough road. So we would come up a bank, and Hack was behind me with Josh sitting behind him on the four-wheeler, and all of a sudden they were disappeared. So I stopped and run back down there. There was Hack under the four-wheeler on top of him, and the gas running on. He's hollering, "Get this thing off of me, this thing's drowning me with gas." So we run and got the four-wheeler off of him. Luckily, neither one of them hurt. We went on our trip, but the county is really going to miss Hack Ayers. He's, like I said, he's done more for us than anything, and so he was my hero, and we're really going to miss him. He was the best thing I can say. He was my hero.
Dormus Miller, thank you for taking time. What an ambassador for Campbell County.
Oh, my goodness. You can go on for days talking about what he's done for Campbell County. It's just amazing. And so, he didn't want to take any credit for it. But I visited him up in the nursing home before he passed, and Charlie Davis was there. And Charlie told me, he said, Hack's going to have a birthday before long. And I said to Hack, I understand you're going to have a birthday in a few days. And he whispered, he said, "Yeah, if I don't change my mind."
A classic Hack answer, right? David G. Young is on the phone. Josh, would you like to do the honors with David G. for us, please?
Hey, David G. Young, Big Josh here. How are you, sir?
Tell one little bitty short story that Hack told me, and then I want to tell something a little bit personal between me and him. The first one, he told me in here, it's been a couple years ago, that he said of course, everybody always knows that he wore cowboy boots and all that, and Lonnie Hatmaker did too. Well, he said him and Lonnie Hatmaker, there was some guy out west, Texas or somewhere, that made boots. And they always wanted a pair of those boots, and they wanted to meet the guy. So he said they went out by there, and they got close enough. So Lonnie said, well, let's just go by the shop there, and we'll meet the guy and order us a pair of boots, too. And he said that they walked in the door, and, of course, Hack, I don't know how tall. You know how he's probably 6'4", I guess. I don't know. Of course, little Lonnie, you know, he's short and small. Said the guy at the counter, said, can I help you? And he said, well, we're wanting to meet Mr. So-and-so. I don't remember the names, but so we want to meet Mr. So-and-so, and we want to order us a pair of boots while we're here. And that guy said, well, I'll go back here and get him. Said, he's busy, but I'll go get him. He said, what size do y'all wear? And Hack said, well, I wear like a 16. And Lonnie said, I wear a 5. And said, that guy went to the back door and hollered and said, hey, Joe, or whatever his name was, said, hey, Joe, there's 2 freaks out here wanting to see you. So they just had a big laugh over that. So he told me that little story about him and Lonnie traveling. But the thing I wanted to tell you was...
You'll never know who's sitting here.
Hey, what?
You'll never guess who's sitting here.
Who is it, Lonnie?
Yeah.
Is Lonnie there?
Yeah,
okay.
Say something to him.
Hey, how you doing, Lonnie? Good to talk to you, buddy.
Oh, here, David. Thanks for being my friend.
Now, what I wanted to tell you, but when I was a young man, Mom and Dad, whatever it was, Friday night, Saturday night, or whatever, we always went to the bargain barn, Hack's bargain barn, and had those auctions and all that stuff. And Hack told me one time, said it's amazing you can drive up north and gather up everybody's junk, and when you cross into the Tennessee line, they're antiques. So that's what I do. But anyway, we experienced that about every Friday and Saturday night, whatever day it was, when we were growing up. But when I first got elected county mayor, county executive back then, I was, I think, the youngest county executive in the state of Tennessee. And of course, I was ambitious anyway, but Hack come to my office one day, and I thought, well, you know, he called and told him that when he'd be there and asked if he could see me. And I thought that's kind of an honor right there anyway, you know, him wanting to see me. So he came in, and he said, I've got something here for you, David. And I said, well, what is it, Hack? He gave me a plaque. It's probably about 10 inches wide and about 8 inches high, real nice gold front on it, and it had a picture of sled dogs, like up in Eskimo country, had all the big line of dogs in the sled pulling the guy, and the caption on it says, and it meant a lot to me, it says, the scenery never changes unless you're the lead dog. Hack said, you remember that right there? And he said, you'll do good. So that's always been an inspiration to me. It hung in my office all the time I was in public office, and it hangs in my house right now today, and I would like someday to show it to the girls. I don't really want to give it away, but I want to show it to all of his daughters someday. And that's just a personal story that he told me, and it really meant a lot to me. And so I know the county's going to miss Hack, and I miss him already. And of course, I'm one of his renters. I rent Premier Cleaners down here from him, but I sure will miss him, and I wish all the best for the family, and God bless you, and thank you for letting me talk about him.
David, you're quite welcome, my friend. You have a great day, and thanks for everything.
Thank you, Big Josh.
All right, buddy. Bye.
David G. Young visiting with us as we celebrate the life of Hack Ayers today here on WLAF. And Lonnie Hatmaker and Hack Ayers, you fellas owned this radio station one time. You both were on the air every day.
If we could have bought it on the credit, we would probably owned it. Because we discovered a long time ago, a little bit of something's better not having anything or nothing. And if we buy it on the credit, no matter what it was, we'd buy it.
That's pretty good math.
Well, most of the time it panned out pretty good.
It's done well for you. You're the sharpest fella in 2 states here today, wearing these cowboy boots, looking sharp.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming by. Share some of those Hack memories with us.
Well, I'd really forgotten about it, but Hack just recently, a year or so ago, he reminded me how long we'd been in business together, 50+ odd years. Now, we had a lot of good times. We had a lot of hard times. but every time we would fall, we'd get back up. And if you can look back at where things were at when Hank and I first started, and the children, the only way you could find a piece of land to build a house on was that Mom and Dad had to die or something. There's no lots. You couldn't get them. They were leaving here. When they'd get young couples get married, they had to leave here. There's no place for them to live. And so Hack, we had a dear friend. We were selling junk over there. Of course, we named it.
Not antiques?
No, we changed the name from junk to antiques.
Okay.
And one time Hack had got in with a load of antiques, and he said, "We got any money at all?" Said, "That truck's empty." And said, "I don't think there's any money in the cash register." So we pulled out a drawer from one of them antiques, and I don't know how come it to fall, but when it hit, it kind of hit face down, and there's $100 bill somebody had tacked to the bottom of that drawer. It hid. Lord knows who it might have been, and he filled the tank up and went home. But we've had a lot of good times together. We've had a lot of difficult. When I went there, Debbie was just a baby, 4 or 5, and then later on, just 2 more coming, just causing all kinds of trouble.
That's not stopped.
And but those children.
We're behind you.
But I was there through the good times, hard times. We went on, but back to the story of the lots. The first subdivision that Hack did, I was going down the street, and a banker called me in. He said, "Who do you think you're going to sell them old raggedy lots to out there?" And I said, "Well, we got buyers for all of them. Everybody's going to pay cash for them. We ain't going to need to borrow no money." And Lord, behold, they did. Everybody that bought lots paid for them. And then from there, I think we went to Hollifield, which was between Jacksboro and Kerrville, and it's full. Now, if you need a lot, you can call them children. Now, there'll be a lot for somebody, wherever they want to build. And then we had a friend that started coming in and playing around, and he told Hack one day, he said, Roger Johnson, he said, "Hack, I'm not teaching school anymore. This is my last year." He said, "I'm coming here to work." Hack said, "Well, Roger, I don't know if we got the money to pay you." He said, "Oh, yeah, there'll be enough money to pay me." And sure enough, Roger Johnson came on board. And from there, you can look at North Lake. There's just all kinds of $1 million homes out there, good, expensive, hardly any home that's less than $500,000. And they just kept on, and they got too big for me, so I got in the carpet business, and we did well in the carpet business. We was the only one in it. We'd go buy something for $1 and sell it for $2, and we done okay out of it.
That's good math.
Well, it was fair. It was fair. Then one time we were selling metal cabinets, and we just had people wanting to know, can you not buy wooden cabinets nowhere? And the salesman that came by, I asked him, I said, "Would you happen to know where anybody could buy a wood cabinet set?" He said, "Well, let me look around and I'll call you." Well, sometime after that, he called me and he said, "I want you to hop a plane and come to Atlanta and I'll pick you up at the airport." And he'd taken me out to this big old warehouse, and I had no idea in the world what I was doing. And you just walk and cabinets to the ceiling. And he said, "Would you buy all these cabinets?" I said, "We're needing this warehouse cleaned out." And I said, "Well, what kind of money would you be talking about?" And whatever it was, we had it then. We was getting on our feet at that time. And I said, but the only way I'll buy them is I'll have you a cashier's check when the last truck rolls in there and unloaded. He said, well, that's fair. Well, we was over in that little bargain barn. We never even had enough room for one tractor and trailer load of cabinets. And that was before we built the blue building. It was just a flat land out there, kind of like a swamp-like thing. And when they came, it was like 8 or 10 tractor loads of them things. And Lord, we got down to the last truck, and we had to put them out in the street. There's just no place else to put no more cabinets. And the policeman came over and said, Lonnie, you can't block this street off like that. And I said, well, we don't have a choice. He said, well, what are you going to do with all these things? I said, I'm going to sell them. I had a little old radio program here at the radio station that I'd had for many, many years. Usually I was laying in the bed of the morning, and I usually started my program like the sun's began to peep out across the ridge, and it'd be pouring the rain outside. Most people wouldn't know the difference. You remember that?
I do remember that, yeah.
And I said, now all of you women out there that's been wanting a beautiful wood kitchen, you bring your own truck, your own measurements, because I don't know what I'm doing, and you have to do your own hauling. And I started praying. I said, hey, what if it comes to rain? I said, I've prayed my heart out all night long. It won't rain. And Lord, behold, it didn't rain for a solid week. And by that time, a good 90% of them cabinets was already gone. And then everybody started coming back and said, Lonnie, we got to have countertops. Said, we've been over to local hardware and said, we're going to have more than countertop we got in the whole kitchen. I called the gentleman back and told him, he said, let me check. Well, he called me back and he said, Lonnie, if the company that makes these tops, if there's one flaw on them, they ain't allowed to sell them. And he said, they've got plenty of them. Said, go back, hop a plane down to Atlanta, I'll pick you up at the airport and I'll take you out. I did. I think I bought them things like 50 cents a foot, whatever it was, practically nothing. They delivered them to La Follette. What we didn't know when we got them to La Follette was there was only one forklift in the whole county that's big enough to pick one of them things up. And we finally got sheet metal to come and unload them trucks. And I thought we done pretty good, but IRS said we did a little better than that. And Hack said the best thing we can do is just settle up with them. Said they seem to know what's going on much more than you and I do. And that's when La Follette Cabinet Company was born, and it's been there ever since. But Hack Ayers was a man that could look at a building and tell you what's behind it. He could see through that building what's behind it. And he lived the life every day like he was going to leave today. And every day everybody's around him, that we all strictly put our faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, and we live by it. And we was always honest with people. We never misrepresented anything to nobody. And but Hack was he was one close friend. We've been beating, banging around this. He said 50 plus odd years. We've been in church together over 50 years. That's what he said. And he kept up all that. But Hack's left a real legend. If you look from the high school down here on down towards Jacksboro, 80% of everything, that's the only progress that we got in the county. That's pretty much takes it all in. But 80% of everything that's down through there, Hack had a vision, and he made things happen. He didn't just put it together, he made it happen. And it did happen. And everybody was around Hack. He taught them, never look on the black side for nothing. Always look on the bright side. And 99% of the time, everything would turn out on the bright side. It might not be exactly the way we wanted, but it was always turned out pretty good. But he was good, and Hack has a good family, good Christian family, and he'll certainly be missed. The church that we've got down there.
He's talking about the La Follette Church of God.
La Follette Church of God. Hack came by the office one day. He said, Lonnie, said, let's go. I said, well, where are we going? He said, we're going down here to where we're going to build that new church. I said, Hack, we ain't got the old one paid for yet. Why we want to build it done? He said, well, we've outgrown Cumberland Avenue. And it was the old drive-in theater. And I said, well, how do you think we're going to pay for everything? He said, well, let's see how we're going to pay for it. Well, the first thing we're going to do, they sold it to us on the credit. That's what we like, worry about everything else later.
That's where you first opened all this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we bought it on the credit, and then we come back and brought it before the church, and the church is about melded because most of them was elderly, and our income came from tithes, and the Lord. Behold, when we got that church started, not knowing, having no idea how in the world we was going to pay for that thing or how far we was going to get with it, there was a man born out of heaven in the center direction, and his name was Jake Butcher. Jake Butcher started turning money loose every direction. Everybody in them woods was getting a high lift, a brand new Ford pickup truck. Coal business boomed. And from there, there's just plenty of money. We've had several people. We had one dear saint give us $100,000, and several people come through and give $50,000, $5,000. But that church would have never been there if it hadn't have been for Hack Ayers. And the rest of us, we just kind of went along and done the best we do. But the church, it's really been good for the community, and they've been a lot of families went through there and raised their children there, and they married and left here. But Hack was he's a dear friend, and them children, they're just like my own children. They all growed up, and they're just good people. And thank you folks for invite me by. I hope I've said something good, because Hack will be remembered for years to come. His body might be gone, but his spirit will be here with us forever.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Sharp-looking Lonnie Hatmaker here, speaking well, looking sharp. Lonnie, thank you so much for coming out today. He's taking off with a pretty girl here, Lonnie Hatmaker, and we appreciate you taking time, Lonnie, as we're celebrating Hack Ayers today, Haskell Hack Ayers. He left us yesterday, and today we are honoring Hack as we have Scotty Kitts on the phone. Well, let's see, wonder which line he's on. I'd say he's on the first line there, because that's we have somebody else in that second one there.
Hey, Scotty Kitts. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. My condolences to the girls and all the Ayers family. Just a couple of things I want to reach on here about Hack Ayers. One good thing about it, I met him, this is unbelievable. I met him when I was 15 years old. Rob Woodson introduced me to him. Rob had always had a tendency of introducing me to some of his constituents, and come to find out Hack Ayers was probably one of the best constituents that he introduced me to, because I met him when I was 15 as a bag boy at Woodson's. So along the way, I kept up with Hack and his real estate and everything, and then eventually I had got married shortly after I had met him, and I purchased a home from the Ayers family and through his real estate. And but you can always Hack knew where his roots were by going into the real estate and looking above what he collected. And he actually loved antiques. I don't know if the girls knew it or not, but from time to time, Hack Ayers would sneak off from the realty, and he would go to, and wherever there were antiques or old stuff, you could have bet you that Hack would be there. So I seen him one time. I was setting up at a show in Atlanta, and believe it or not, I guess Hack just stopped at one of the big shows, and there he was. And he actually purchased something for me. He never did pay asking price, I can tell you that. He always wanted to barter with you, and of course, I'd have to give him a deal, But the one thing I want to say is when my son, I raised him from purchasing the house from Hack in the Ayers Realty. My son had went down there years ago and had made a payment, and up above where I had gave a Hack a hat one time, a Kids Care for Carpet. My son had looked at it up there, and of course Hack came out and everything, and he reached up there and knew who my son was, and gave my son that hat, and that really touched my son. And everybody knows that where the roots were. Hack, he knew where his roots were, and he is going to be greatly missed. And we've lost a good one, but he's in a better place now.
That's a fact. Hey, Scotty, we appreciate you calling and sharing those thoughts with us, and the family appreciates it. And you have a blessed day, brother.
All right. My condolences to all the family.
Scotty Kiss with us. Mayor Mike Stanfield is here. Mayor? Hey, doing well. Doing well. Good to see you. And you've been to see the governor here this morning and taking time to stop by this afternoon. And, of course, there's not a soul in Campbell County who does not know Hack Ayers, and you're, of course, on that list.
Oh, everybody knows Hack Ayers and his family. They don't come no better than the Ayers family. And I'll tell you about Hack. Before Debbie and the girls were born, when Tommy and Hack first got married, he had the bargain barn. And my older brother, George, and me, we were their kids until their kids come along, We'd get out in the 50s and we'd throw snowballs. And Murray and Claude Forster had a store over on Indian Avenue. Claude done upholstery. And we was throwing snowballs one day. And Hack was running Hack, and he got hung in a wire clothesline and almost cut his neck off. Had a big red welt on it. But when he'd go north to get furniture to sell at a tent sale in the bargain barn, he'd take George with him. But, we grew up with the Ayers family. And out of respect for Hack and his family and the business person he was all these years, I've ordered their flags at high staff in his honor. We've lost so many of our friends this week, especially two business people. George Ellison and Lou lost her son, Brent. And now we've lost Hack Ayers, We're losing all our friends. And my mother, there are 6 of us kids, she's not doing well. And we was at her house last night. We called hospice in with Mom. But we were going through her picture albums back when we were kids at the bargain barn, and Hack and Tommy and just it brought back so many memories. We was talking about Hack, and we didn't know he'd passed, But he was such a fine person and an inspiration to not only La Follette is heartbroken, but whole Campbell County is broken. And the governor, he sent his deepest sympathy to the family today.
La Follette Mayor Mike Stanfield, and of course, what an ambassador for La Follette and Campbell County and Hack Ayers.
Oh my God, they didn't come no better. Back when he was campaigning, back probably in the 60s, I'd go with him. He's running for state representative, and he always had a fruit basket to give to people. We'd go up here in the mountains, and he'd knock on the door, and the people would invite us in his house, me and him and Tommy, and he'd give them a fruit basket. And the people in his houses, they had like newspaper on the wall, like wallpaper, but that was to try to keep the heat from going outside in the wintertime. And Hack would be telling me he's running for this or that, and people would ask me, is he your daddy? I say, he ain't my daddy, but it would have been such an honor to have Hack Ayers for a daddy. And when my dad died in 88, Dad took his life in 88, and the phone was ringing, and I picked it up, and it was Hack Ayers wanting to know if he could do anything for the family. That's friendship for you. And we'll always be here for the Ayers family. And my heart goes out to Tommy and the girls and the grandchildren.
Well, Mayor, thank you for taking time today. Any other thoughts you'd like to share with us about Hack Ayers as we celebrate him today?
God, just keep him gates wide open. He's on his way. Knowing Hack, he's trying to sell something, piece of property before he gets there. But everybody, please remember the family in prayer. Thank you, John.
Very good. Follow Mayor Mike Stanfield here on WLAF as we remember Hack Ayers and we celebrate his life here today. And we have a WLAF alum. We're keeping the girls on hold here. We have Charles Lingerfeld, who is a WLAF alum, on the phone to share a thought or two. Big Josh is going to visit with Charles here about Hack Ayers.
Hey, Charles, Big Josh here. How are you today, sir?
Hey, doing pretty good. And you?
I am doing well, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're going to share some thoughts about Hack with us today?
Yeah, I can.
Go right ahead.
I was born in La Follette, and in 1944, June of 1944, when we lived in the old hospital down there across from the post office. And we lived over on East Ash Street, and the back of our property, our lawn, kind of connected with the old auction company that they had there. And we would go over there, my brother and I, who was 2 years older, Ken, and he was 11 and I was 9, and we'd hang around there. So finally the owner of the auction company, who was our pastor, Brother A.J. Phillips, hired us to work around at the auction, and we would sweep the floors and keep them clean and help them move furniture around, unload trailers and trucks and bring the furniture inside and et cetera. And I remember one time, I remember the first time that Haskell Ayers came by there, and he started coming by every Friday night when we had an auction. And he would walk around and look and observe and listen to the auctioneer. And then it wasn't too long after that he went to Iowa. I don't know what the dealings were, but he evidently bought out the business in the process of time from Brother Phillips, and changed the name of it to Hack's Bargain Barn. But before he did that, he went to Iowa to learn how to become an auctioneer, and then came back, and he was ready and gung-ho for business. And so we worked there. He told Ken and me that he wanted us to stay on and continue to work. We worked for $1.50 a week. And we would work 2 weeks and buy a pair of jeans for $1.98 plus tax. And then we'd work another week and buy a short-sleeve shirt for 98 cents plus tax. And so that's how we started out buying clothes for ourselves. But Hack became, we attended the same church together, and he became friends with he and his wife. I remember when he and Tommy Sue were married, and I remember when they had their first daughter, Debbie. So I knew the family real well. I knew Lassie. I knew that she had the restaurant down in Jacksboro, and she knew us real well. I knew Jerry real well. Jerry, the daughter, is the one that played the organ in the church and did quite well. I knew R.L., and R.L. played football there at Jacksboro too, but Hack played football as well for the Jacksboro Eagles, Golden Eagles they called them, and they were our competition when La Follette would play Jacksboro. And so Hack was evidently a pretty good football player, and R.L. is the one who told me this story. He told me that he was pretty good, and he got a scholarship somehow. I don't know if it was a full scholarship or partial or whatever, but he got a scholarship for football there at Mississippi State. And he started going there and getting ready for football, and he had such a big foot. I think it was maybe a 16 size shoe that he wore, and they didn't have shoes big enough to meet fit his feet. And so he had to practice out there barefoot and sock feet and whatever. And they didn't provide him with shoes quick enough, and he got tired. I think he wore some blisters on his feet, and he got tired of working out in his feet, and he came on back home and started doing something else. I think he started with Texas not Texas, but I'm calling from Dallas, Texas. I've lived here since '69. I think he started working with Tennessee Department of DOT, Department of Transportation. But he came by there and he got affiliated with the business and bought it out, changed the name to Hack's Bargain Barn, and we worked there for him until we later started carrying papers with the Knoxville News Sentinel and made a little bit more money. We started making pretty close to $10 a week. So in the meantime, also, I started my wood chopping business. I'd cut up kindling and put it in small boxes and medium boxes and go around the community selling kindling to people. I had some customers, and they'd buy boxes of wood from me to help start their fires and wood stoves. So I had a real good relationship with Hack through the years, and Tommy, and I went off after I graduated from high school in 1963 there at La Follette. I went off to college down there in Cleveland, Tennessee, at Lee College. It's today called Lee University. And one weekend I came home, and somehow Hack had found out that I had a need at the school somehow, financially, and he came up to me and had a $100 bill in his hand, and he squeezed it into my hand and said, now this is for you. You just use it wherever you need it. He was a good man. He was honest. He was had a good business. He had a personality that was much on the plus side. He knew a lot of people. A lot of people knew him, and he had a personality that would get along with almost everyone. If you couldn't get along with Hack Ayers, you couldn't get along with anyone. He was a man of courage to me, integrity, honesty, and character. And frankly, a lot of the things that I learned growing up in La Follette, I learned from, of course, my grandfather, Pop Lingerfeld, and Dad, Chester, and my mother and grandmother, but I learned a lot from Hack Ayers as well. How to conduct myself, how to meet and greet people. Then later on in high school, I started working at the King's Department Store and became a stock boy and stand out front and greet people, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, learning how to greet people, shake their hand and smile and invite them on into the store. But it all got started when I was 9 years old working there at the auction company. So I'm saddened to hear of Hack Ayers passing away, but there's no doubt in my mind where he is, because Hack was a fine Christian man, and he lived by example, and he didn't mind telling you he was a Christian, and you knew it because of the life he lived. So I guess that's what I wanted to share with you about Hack Ayers today.
Well, all right, my friend, I thank you so much for calling, and we do appreciate all your words and thoughts and prayers, and thank you so much.
His family will be in my thoughts and prayers, and God bless all of you.
All right, thank you very much. And Jim, as we move on here.
Thank you, sir. We're moving right along. Charles Lingerfeld from La Follette, now living in Dallas, and has been for, about 50 years, I think he said.
Yeah.
As we are remembering and celebrating Hack Ayers today, Haskell Hack Ayers. Charlie Hudson is here. Bill, would you like to come on in and talk some Hack Ayers? Bill Waddell, of course, WLAF station owner here, is. He has a few Hack stories. Bill?
Well, Hack has been a friend of ours, and we've done all kinds of business over many, many years. Hack used to come in when he was getting ready for an auction, and he'd buy commercials. And he'd always come in. He had a slogan back then, 10% down, 10 years to pay, and 10% interest. And Hack would come in and say, I need to record, got a big auction Saturday. And he'd come back and set him down, and he'd record. And he would use that slogan, and he'd say, "Give me a bunch of them and let everybody know about it." And he'd take off, and he was just that kind of person. Hack dug the line with a tractor that he had bought when he was a young man from down at the Fleet Building up here to the tower. And he's talked about that many times. And I told him he did it for one of our interviews, and I said, in other words, your career to fame and fortune started right here. And he said, "Well, you might say that. At least part of it did." But he was such a wonderful person. And, you know, there are some people that truly are legends. When you mention their first name, that's all you need to say.
That's right.
You know, we celebrated Elvis Presley's birthday yesterday. And for many, many years, all you need to say is Elvis. Everybody knew what you were talking about. Kaz Walker, a legend in this area. All you needed to say was Kaz, and everybody knew what you were talking about. And around here, Hack Ayers, all you needed to say was Hack.
That's right.
And when you can build that kind of legacy and leave that kind of reputation, it speaks mighty well of you. So we salute Hack, and we will remember him always.
All right, Bill, I appreciate that. And what some great memories we do have of our brother and good friend Hack Ayers. And Jim, we got so many directions to go. I don't know which direction to go right now. So
well, we can bring Charlie Hudson in here. Charlie's snapping a lot of photos.
Come and help us out here.
And the connection with Charlie Hudson and Hack is that they have a lot of I guess collectibles as well as pictures, photographs. That's the big thing. And Hack had a very special nickname for you.
It was Junior, and after hearing all these stories today, I really am the junior in the group because, these people talking about knowing Hack for 40 and 50 years. I don't go back that far. I was just telling Deb and the girls out there that the rumors started about the caboose going to be gone. And so I thought, well, I'll go to the source. So I went down to Hack's office, and we were sitting there talking, and I asked him about the caboose. Well, he starts off on this story about L&N Railroad. He gets the caboose from them. It's $750, and it's 1965. And it's just like, this happened yesterday afternoon when we worked all this out. So we're sitting there talking about it, and he goes, asked me if I knew Joe, what was the guy with Shelby's?
Joe Harrell.
Joe Harrell. And I said, yeah, I sort of remember Joe. And he said, when we bought this thing, we had like 24 hours to get it off the track because evidently the depot back then was a pretty busy place. So he contacts Joe Harrell at Shelby's Construction, and so they set up a date and a time when this caboose is going to be here. Well, they take those guys up there. There was no crane involved. This was all railroad ties, railroad jacks, and manpower. So they get this thing off the track, get it loaded on a lowboy. And Joe Harrell tells him when they're leaving the depot, he said, "I've got one real concern, Hack." And Hack goes, "What's that?" He said, "The curve out here at 5th Street and Central Avenue in front of the Fleet Building." He said, "When we make that curve with this float and that caboose on the back of it, if that thing comes off, we're going to wipe out half of La Follette." But luckily, as Hack said, everything went smooth. They got that thing out there. Again, never used a crane. It was railroad ties, railroad jacks, and just manpower. And they put that thing in, and it sat there for 53, 54 years after that. But anytime I went down there, it was always a funny with Hack. And another thing he always liked to do, me and him would be sitting looking at pictures, and I'd hand him a box of pictures, and in a minute he'd go, "Come here a minute, Junior, let me show you something." And I'd walk over, and he said, "You know what that is?" And I'm going, "Hack, I don't have a clue what you're showing me." And then he would give me Indian River Village boat dock was a typical example. And he said, "That's Indian River boat dock, and he would start giving me a history lesson on the boat dock. But that was my stories with Hack. He was always just, years ago when I started doing this, he had the party barn. Yes. And I went down there one time, and he said, me and James Hatmaker, who was a relative of Hack's, that's kind of how we got together. And he says, "Let's take a trip." I said, "Okay." And we go out and we get in the vehicle. I said, "Where are we going?" And he said, "Do you know where the party barn's at?" And I went, yeah, I know exactly where it's at. He said, that's where we're going. Well, we all get out of the truck, the Jimmy, and we walk up to the building. And Hack says, come over here, Junior, I'm going to show you something. And there was a sign hanging on the wall outside, metal sign. He pushes the sign aside, and there's a key hanging on a nail. And he goes, here's how you get in. And we walked back over, and then I had never been upstairs in that building, but we got upstairs, and it was loaded with photographs. And so one night, me and Bill Widener were down there taking pictures of pictures. And it's, what is it, Deb, 10:30, 11 o'clock? Oh, easily. So we've got the lights on, you know, we're up there, and flashes is going off and everything. So Deb comes over to check on it, see what's going on. And once she got up there and she come in, and there me and Bill sat, and she could have come in and done anything with us because we didn't even know she was in the building. But anyway, everything was kind of cool once Debbie got there, and she kind of we explained what was going on. So, and you know, that was just Hack. You know, come over there and take all the pictures. If I had any questions, I'd get on the phone and call him, or I'd go down and see him. You know, that was Hack Ayers. And the community's going, that's a great loss. Historically, that's a great loss because Hack, and just like Jack Reynolds and Lonnie, all these guys that have all these stories, when they're gone, the stories are pretty much gone.
Yeah,
that's sad. You know, that's really sad. So to me, those pictures and the memories I have of Hack will always be a part of that. You know, that's just part of my life with Hack, so to speak. That's it.
Thank you, Junior.
Okay.
Charlie Hudson, a.k.a. Junior, to Hack Ayers. We're honoring and remembering down memory lane. We celebrate the life of Haskell Hack Ayers today here on WLAF. And Big Josh, during the news this morning, you and Hack had an exchange here a few years ago about Hack being on the air. And I guess one of the funniest things about that was that he would do his radio program by way of the telephone, and that he had gone to Tokyo. Is that the way the story goes?
Yeah, he was in Tokyo and called in his program, man.
And he would the time there was 2 a.m. and of course it was noon here, 2 a.m. in Tokyo. But he said that when he made it back home, that nobody believed him that he had gone to Tokyo because he'd been on the radio every day. Yes.
That's right. Who would have thought of that?
Okay, let's bring in David Hicks. David Hicks is here.
All right.
Let's see. Oh, we've got Colette Love. Let's get Colette on the. She's been on the phone here about 15 minutes.
All right. Well,
Josh, we'll let you get Miss Colette on the air here.
Hey, Colette, thank you for holding with us. We appreciate that.
All righty, it's Claudette.
Claudie.
Yes.
All right, I got it. Well, I was close. Anyway, you got some Hack stories, I'm assuming.
Oh, yes. Back in the day, my husband grew up with Hack. They played football there in where the Woodson Mall is at that time. And the Housley girls would come down and play with them. And my husband always told me those girls were as strong as men because they could play better football than him and Hack. But anyway, Hack was in office when we got married. And we just, grew up with him, I guess. And my husband and I got married in '64, and he went to work for Hack a little time after that. And then I went to work for his mother in '65. And I worked for her until her nephew came and took over the restaurant. And then in '69, we had to close because the interstate bypassed us. And he went to Lake City and bought a motel and restaurant. And I went down there and worked for 14 years. But my fondest memories of Hack are he knew me from day one and up until a couple of years ago, the last time I saw him, he knew who I was, And I really had a close, I guess, relationship with Debbie because she would come over every morning and eat breakfast before she went to school. Hack and Tommy lived right behind the restaurant. And I feel like that she kind of grew up with us. And but I didn't have that close relationship with the other girls. But Debbie's always been sticks out in my mind because I knew her when she was like maybe 6, 8 year old or something like that. And she would, and Tommy and I were pregnant with my first son at the same time. And I wound up having him 2 months early. So he's 2 months early than, I guess, than Cody. I'm thinking Cody was the one that she had during that time. And they used to get a lot of stuff from Spiegel's, baby stuff, and she would go through and put back what she wanted, and then she'd holler at me to come get what I wanted. So, you know, you just can't find people like that anymore. And I really hate that the girls lost their dad, but he is in a better place. He won't have to worry about working anymore or nothing. And our goal is to meet him. So that's about all I need to tell you.
Well, all right. It's Claudette. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us and to the Hack Ayers family, and it's just a big family, it seems, Jim, that we got going here.
I think Hack has touched so many lives in Campbell County. Obviously, that Claudette, that's one right there in her family. Pastor David Hicks is here. David, you have some Hack memories to share with us, too.
I've got several. I've known Hack for 50-plus years, and when I first met him, I used to listen to him on the trading post all the time when him and Lonnie Hatmaker was on there. That was an event. But when I first got married, I didn't have any money. I rent a house, and Hack sold me every bit of the furniture for that house on credit. He didn't even know me. He's just a very trustworthy man. Hack was a community pillar. He done a lot of things for people that people don't even know about. And and the years went by, I started in business, and Hack was so supportive of me. Every time I saw him, he always wanted to know how things were going, what he could do to help me. He's just an icon. And I told the family when I first walked in, I told the girls, I said, don't ever say that you lost your daddy. You never lose anything if you know where it is.
That's good. That's good, David.
He's just a fine young man. He's going to be missed. He's going to be missed.
Yes. And such an ambassador for our community when he would be outside of Campbell County.
Yeah, he was known for a lot of places, more than just La Follette, but actually even out of Tennessee. He's just a fine man. He's going to be missed, and you know, you live once and die twice. When you're born, you live. Then when you die, well, you die again when somebody's around that don't remember you. As long as I'm alive, he'll always be alive. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way.
That's so good.
That's a good thought. Thanks for sharing that with us, David Hicks. And anything else about Hack that you'd like to share with us?
He's got a picture of my plant down at his motel. And every time I'd go down there, he'd always take me back there and show it to me. Hack was a good businessman. He's just a good man, period. And I'm sure that everybody's been listening to the radio stations, heard a lot of good things. I don't think you'll hear anybody say anything bad about him. If you do, they're wrong.
Yeah, not in front of this crowd.
That's right. That's right. David, thank you as always.
I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate WLAF doing this for them, too. They're worthy of it.
Well, I mean, this is just this pales in comparison to what Hack has done for our community, but we're making an effort to honor him today.
If I might take just a few more minutes to say something. You know, the Greek word for a coffin is a hope chest. So, you remember back years ago, the ladies would, when they were going to get married, they would prepare a hope chest.
Yep.
And they wouldn't put just anything in it. They put precious items. Then when the marriage came, they'd take those precious items out and display them. Well, on the day of the resurrection, that marriage supper of the Lamb comes, Hack will be coming out of there. He'll look different than he was when he was put in there, but he'll still be Hack.
That's right.
I appreciate you men doing this, and I'm sure the family does too.
David, thank you.
Thank you.
David Hicks, taking time to visit with us as we celebrate Hack Ayers today, Haskell Hack Ayers. And is it time for the girls? Can we get one of the girls? Cody, I think, is she's drawn the short straw here.
I think
maybe not. Well, we want all three girls at once, or are we just going to start with Hey You?
Well, Hey You's right here. Hi, Jim, and let me. Excuse me, I'm just kind of speechless, and you know me, that's very unusual.
This we may we may want to buy a lottery ticket if she's speechless.
Exactly, me being speechless. But thank you so very much for this honor to be able to speak about my father, whom has been a absolutely wonderful father to all of us. Thank you for being the village that helped raise us, to all of you all out there, and thank you for loving my father as much as we have, because without you all, La Follette is our family too. La Follette, Jacksboro, Caryville, Jellicoe, Campbell County, you are our family, and you don't know how much we appreciate all of you. Now, to the gentleman down in Texas, I guess I'm going to start like a typical female, and I'm going to say our stories, the version I got on Dad's feet size, had to do with, a lot of people don't know that Dad was in the U.S. Marine Reserve. He and 4 of his friends, right out of high school, decided that they're going to go and join the Marines. And there was a little place down here in Jacksboro. You went through one end of the building, and when you came out of the other end, you were inducted. Well, Dad's name starts with A. He goes in first before the boys, and of course comes out the other end and waits 3.5 hours, and there are no other boys. They'd run off. They decided not to join the Marines, so Dad was in there all by him little self. So here's Hack, Slabfoot Hack, as he was known during the high school years as well, and he takes off to the little, I guess you'd call it a station they had up there at Fort Campbell. Even though it was Marines, it was a issuance where they'd get their uniforms and such. Well, Dad gets up there, and of course, Dad wears a 14. They didn't have size 14 boots, strangely enough, in the military. So Dad shows up the next morning for the first day of basic training, and he's in white bucks, and everybody else is in combat boots. Of course, the drill sergeant gets right up in his face. He says, "Son, you cannot train in those shoes." "Well, what am I going to do, sir?" He said, "Well, you're going to go home and come back for the next cycle when they have your boots." "Yes, sir, I'll go home." Dad comes home. He meets A.J. Phillips. Dad knows that he's going to have to go for the next cycle of basic training, whatever that happens to come up. He's got Hack's Bargain Barn started. A.J. Phillips says, we're going to be partners here, and I'll take care of the business while you're in the military. Dad says, "Well, that's great." The first paycheck from the government comes in. Dad puts it in Hack's Bargain Barn. So the next cycle comes by. He gets a paycheck again. I've not been to basic training. Next cycle comes by. Dad gets a paycheck. Well, this is wonderful. The government is funding my Hack's Bargain Barn. I didn't even ask them to, At the end of 3 years, the last little envelope Dad got from the U.S. Marines was his honorable discharge. So that goes to say, Dad always said, when God doesn't want you somewhere, you ain't going to be there. So that's how Dad did the military, and thankfully, they never found boots to fit him. And on the Mississippi State, Dad was a wonderful football player, strong. He and my son got to share the same football number, as a matter of fact, number 74. But Dad did get the scholarship to Mississippi State, which was a wonderful thing. But Dad had met and married Tommy Ayers, Housley Ayers, pardon me. Dad said that when he got to college, he'd been there 2 weeks. This scholarship, which he was so thrilled to have. But he said, Tommy was in my dreams every single night. And he said, I couldn't stand anymore. He said, one night in the middle of the night, I just left and came home, and I've been here ever since with Tommy.
Good choice.
It was. They have both been the most wonderful parents anybody could ever ask. And I can tell you one more story. I'll let my sisters join in here. But let me tell you about the father my dad was. That's not something a lot of people get to know about. When I was 10 years old and full of vim and vinegar, a little headstrong like my mom, I thought I'd run away from home. I was 10. Well, my mom and Dad must have gotten a whiff of that, because when I went to bed that night with all my clothes on and had the cover up, Dad come in and prayed with me. And, just prayed, Lord, we love her, and she's got a nice home and all this, and she's got a roof over her head, and she's fed well. And I'm going, that's a weird prayer. But okay, and Dad goes to bed in the next bedroom over. Well, every few minutes they start asking me questions. Sis, are you okay? Are you warm? Are your pajamas too tight? I'm going, well, finally I slip out the window, and I'm ahead. Now, at this point, we're living in the little house behind where our office is right now. That time it's just a little 5-room house, and I cut off across the parking lot, and I'm going where the mall is today. I've got a lunchbox and a little suitcase with a pair of clothes. I'm going for the railroad track, and I was going to meet up with Mary Lou Newport. We were going to get a boxcar and get gone. Dad comes running out in house coat, because evidently I hadn't answered the last question that he had asked me there, and Dad comes running out across the parking lot, and he's barefoot. He catches up with me. I drop my suitcase and my clothes, and they're now buried under the asphalt there at the mall. And Dad's dragging me back to the house back there. Sis, what in the blue persuaded you to do such a thing? Sis, what in the blue? You're going to worry your mother and I to death. The next thing I see is he's taking a switch off the tree, and I'm going, oh, Lord. Lord, Dad's got me, and Dad's never whipped me in my life, and he's going to kill me this time. He's going to get me. We go into the house, and just as soon as we get into the house, Dad throws that switch across the room. He says, Sis, come over here to the couch. And I am shaking in my boots, because my dad, at 10 years old, had never spanked me. So I knew I was in trouble. He said, get on your knees, sis. We're going to pray. And you're going to tell the Lord why you wanted to run away from home. Well, I can tell you why I wanted to run away from home. My mother was a good disciplinarian. But make a long story short, Dad said, but before we can pray, he said, you always come into the Lord's courts with praise and thanksgiving. He said, you're going to thank him for the house, the parents. You know, you keep a warm bed, you do this, you do that. And I mean, we went through 20 things that I had to be thankful for. And sure enough, I had to walk through there and say I was thankful for this, thankful for that, thankful for that. So when it came down, he said, you can tell the Lord why you wanted to run away from home? I don't think I want to run away from home anymore, Daddy. He said, I've got a daddy that ran across the parking lot in his bare feet and they're bleeding. And I really appreciate you, Daddy. But that was the kind of father I had.
Hack Ayers.
Hack Ayers, the best daddy in the whole wide world. And I've got to give Dad one more little bit of credit. Very few men would have raised their daughters in the auctioneer business, which was primarily a male business at that time. But as Dad said, he always worked with what he had. So I'll introduce you to my sister, Tracy, at this point, the middle one.
Okay, we're coming from Debbie to Tracy. Tracy, step on in here.
I have to follow her.
Yes, well, that's not easy. We should have brought her in last. Yeah, Hack Jr. over here.
No, that's Hackalina. Her middle name is Hackalina.
No, you're Hack Jr. She's Hackalina. Okay, and you're the middle child.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Share a thought or two, if you would, about your dad, Hack Ayers, as we celebrate him today.
Okay. Deb asked me on the way down here, she said, what is your memory? I said, oh, no, I got to have a memory because today's not a good day to have a memory. But probably one of my favorite was the Tennessee Auctioneers Association was roasting my dad because he was going in as the president of the National Auctioneers Association. This was going in, and it was happening in Knoxville at the Hilton, and we checked in. I just happened to be 10 months pregnant with my first daughter, and we check into the hotel. You know, we're starting to get dressed, and the banquet is at the hotel. So I, of course, think I'm in labor, so I go to the hospital, and I call Mom, and they're all sitting at this head table. But then we didn't have cell phones, so somebody had to go get her and said, tell her that I'm in labor. So she leaves the head table, comes to the hospital. So then I call, of course, my sisters after about an hour. I think it's going to happen. So they leave the head table and go to the hospital, and leaves Dad sitting there all alone. And I don't even know if he knows what's going on. But we had the doctors hold off a little bit, and he got there just in time.
Perfect timing.
It was perfect timing, yes, sir. Not as funny as Deborah's story, but it's a good memory for me.
We're remembering Hack Ayers here today on WLAF. Tracy's trying to scratch up a thought here. You want to just bring Cody on?
No. No, I just have to say, I always knew when Dad passed that I could always say I would never have to regret not spending enough time with him. I spent as much time with him as I could. I walked in the mornings with him. I met him at the hotel for breakfast. We went to the hotel workout room together in the mornings. And, of course, worked with him for all these years. And he's just somebody I wanted to be with.
Very well said. Thank you, Tracy. As we are remembering Hack Ayers today, and Cody, the youngest of the girls.
I'm the what of the girls?
The youngest.
Oh, okay.
In big bright letters.
My favorite story, and there's so many. We've just been, honestly, probably the most blessed young women to have such an example, a businessman, a leader, ethically, morally, spiritually. And I think that was the biggest thing, and that's my story. Is I remember being young, and every single night, Dad would wolf down supper. Mom always had supper ready at 5:30, and he would wolf down supper. And he would always had a funeral to go to or a council meeting to go to. I mean, every night. And we used to joke that if one person from every funeral shows up to his, that we'd have to rent out Thompson Bowling because he just loved people and loved to show them how much he loved them. But when I was a little girl, I remember seeing Daddy. We had a radio recliner in the living room. Sorry, Mom. But he loved that recliner, and it's hung under a lamp. And every single night he was reading his Bible without fail, no matter what time he came back, and it was a King James. And I remember telling him, I'm getting up a couple of years, probably preteen or teenager, and I said, Daddy, I just don't understand the Bible. And he said, Sissy, I don't much understand it either, but what I do know is that the Lord will impart to me what I need when I need it, if I just keep reading it. And I think that that's probably the best piece of advice that anybody has ever given me, let alone a daddy. And I was trying to tell Tracy, I said one of the little tidbits was there was never a time that you could get attached to anything at your home because, well, including your home. Deborah went to camp for 2 weeks?
No, for 5 days.
Oh, 5 days. She went to church camp. And when she came home, they dropped her off at what she thought was her house, and the family had moved while she was gone. No lie.
Maybe a hint?
Was that the E.E. Hill house?
Maybe there was
yes,
a message
so they had moved to the E.E. Hill house. But Tracy went to spend the night with a friend, and she had a beautiful brass bed that I was so very jealous of her having this bed. And she came home, and her mattress was laying on the floor because somebody had come by and bought the bed while she was at a friend's house. And I remember begging Dad, everything was trade. You know, we would have a boat one week, we'd have a four-wheeler one week, we'd have some. But I remember a four-wheeler that ran particularly well because he wasn't a good mechanic. So when he did trade, he usually had to have somebody else look at the parts and pieces. But we had a four-wheeler, and I've been riding. I said, Dad, will you promise me one thing? And he said, what? And I said, can I keep this four-wheeler at least 1 week before you sell it? But you never got attached to anything at the house. And we always joke that we were the same way, that if somebody came along and made a good enough offer that he'd sell one of us. But I used to peek around the corner of him in that little ratty recliner, little, and he'd see my head because I was a natural blonde then. And he would look, and he'd put down his Bible or book or whatever he was reading, and he would say, I'm feeling kind of lonely. I sure do wish I had a sweet little blonde-headed girl that'd come and cuddle up with me. And I'd run as fast as I could, and I'd jump up in that recliner, and he'd say, oh, how did you know I needed some cuddle-up time? And when I was holding his hand yesterday, I kept on saying, thank you, Daddy, for my cuddle-up time.
Thank you, girls. Cody, Tracy,
Oh, Dad told me
Deb.
to tell you something. He wrote a book. It's on Amazon, and if you want more of Hack stories, Hills, Steals, and Deals is on Amazon. Or you can buy them at the office.
You truly are a Hack's daughter.
And we cannot express to you all or the community the outpouring that has taken place in less than 24 hours has been tremendous and overwhelming. But for you all to do this, he would be so tickled, so tickled. Just amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Hack, he was part of the WLAF family from literally from day one. You know, he dug the trench for the cable from the tower over to the Fleet Building, and I don't think he ever got paid for that.
I'm sure he took it out and traded somewhere. Yeah, don't worry about that.
But ladies, thank you so much, Deborah, Tracy, Cody. It's been a pleasure and an honor to look back on your dad's life and share some great memories.
And you've allowed us to hear some memories we didn't know about, which is even better than what we knew. Thank you, La Follette. Thank you, Campbell County, for being our village.
As we celebrate Hack Ayers today here on WLAF, Big Josh, thank you so much. Big Josh works 20 hours a day. He worked an extra 21 today. So thank you so much for hanging out with us and making all this happen today. Thank all of those of you who took part today by phone or here in person, listening, whatever the case may be. Big Josh, thank you. And we'll close out today with Happy Tracks as we are celebrating Hack Ayers here on WLAF.
I know that you've heard people say many, many times you don't pass through this world, but once you get yours, and I'll get mine. But I've got a philosophy I believe I'd rather go by, and if you'll just listen, you may want to give it a try. Leave a lot of happy tracks as you go down life's road.